Elara's fingers danced over the loom, threads of crimson and gold shimmering under the soft lamplight. Each knot, each intricate pattern, was a defiant whisper against the pack's quiet expectations for an Omega, a life confined, predictable. She hummed low, a tune of wild independence, a melody entirely her own. Not only that, the scent of lavender and cedar filled her small workshop, a sanctuary from the hushed urgency of the upcoming 18th birthday rites. "Still weaving, my little rebel?" Her mother's voice, soft as a worn shawl, drifted in from the doorway. "The celebration starts soon. All the eligible Omegas are buzzing." Elara tightened a thread, pulling it taut. "Let them buzz, Mama. My loom calls louder." Even so, a coil of anxiety tightened in her stomach. Her mother's gentle words carried the weight of tradition, of duty. Omegas were meant to be nurturers, peacekeepers, and, most importantly, mates. She just wanted to weave, to create, to be. What's worse, the thought of being tethered, owned, made her skin crawl. "A mate isn't a cage, Elara," her mother sighed, stepping closer. Her fingers, calloused from years of hearth and home, brushed Elara's arm. "It's a bond, a partnership." "Partnership or property?" Elara countered, her voice sharper than she intended. She didn't know what scared her more, the idea of rejection or the idea of acceptance. Just like that, a sudden sharp prick on her finger, a crimson bead blooming on her skin, mirroring the red thread. A chill, cold and unsettling, snaked down her spine. It was just a needle, she told herself, but the air around her seemed to thicken, heavy with an unspoken premonition. Was this the universe telling her to stop fighting fate or warning her of its approach? The air throbbed with 1,000 heartbeats, the celebratory bonfires casting dancing shadows on the ecstatic faces of newly turned 18-year-olds. Laughter pealed, too loud, too free for Elara's taste. She stood near the edge of the clearing, a ghost among the revelers, nursing a cup of spiced cider. Young Omegas giggled, their eyes bright with the hunt for their fated alpha, their whispers a symphony of hopeful speculation. Elara felt like an anthropologist observing a strange tribal ritual, detached and wary. "Did you hear?" A voice, high and breathless, cut through the din. "From the Northmount pack. Alpha Thorne, they say. Reclusive, powerful, and utterly heartbroken." Another chimed in. "Poor souls. His territory is desolate, I heard. A tragedy befell his family years ago. He never took a mate after that." Maybe it was fate, the way the name Thorne seemed to vibrate in the air, stirring an odd echo in Elara's chest. She dismissed it as nonsense, mere gossip. Yet her ears strained, picking up fragments. Rare for marks to appear now. Broken alpha. Such a loss. Truth be told, the stories of distant alpha packs and their ancient traditions always felt like a different world, a far-off dream, or nightmare. She didn't want any part of their ancient, complicated legacies. She just wanted to go back to her threads, to the quiet hum of her loom. Why did everyone else seem so eager to surrender their lives to a mystical bond? By the time the last embers of the bonfire glowed, a strange, persistent tingling began on her wrist, a subtle warmth beneath her skin. She rubbed it, assuming it was the cold night air, but the sensation lingered, a silent, insistent hum. The moon, a sliver of silver, pierced through the narrow window of Elara's workshop, casting long, eerie shadows. The scent of pine from the forest outside, normally comforting, now felt oppressive. Her hands, usually so steady at the loom, trembled as she tried to finish a new pattern, the one she'd started this morning. The persistent tingling on her wrist had intensified, growing from a hum to a dull throb, like a heartbeat trapped beneath her skin. With every heartbeat, the sensation flared. She ripped back her sleeve, her breath catching in her throat. There it was, a swirling, intricate design, pulsing with a faint, otherworldly luminescence. A brand that screamed, mated. Her stomach plummeted, a cold, heavy stone settling in its place. She knew instinctively, sickeningly, what it was. the fated mark. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a silly superstition. This was real. "No," she whispered, the word raw, barely audible. She pressed her thumb against it as if she could somehow erase it, rub away the undeniable truth. The mark burned, a searing confirmation of a destiny she vehemently rejected. Every fiber of her being screamed in protest. Her deepest fear, losing her freedom, becoming someone's property, was materializing before her eyes. The independent life she had meticulously woven, thread by precious thread, was unraveling. And just like that, everything changed. Her world tilted, spinning into a terrifying, fated unknown. What now? Okay, let's dive into Act 2, focusing on the catalyst that irrevocably changes Elara's life. We'll ensure every scene builds on the foundation we laid in Act 1, amplifying the emotional stakes and driving her deeper into the central conflict. The pulsating mark on Elara's wrist felt like a brand, searing hot, a constant, cruel reminder of the fate she'd tried to outrun. 2 days had passed since its appearance, 2 days of desperate denial, of trying to pretend it wasn't real. But then, a shadow fell across her workshop's threshold. Not her mother this time, but a burly alpha messenger, his scent of pine and crisp mountain air alien to their familiar forest pack. He carried a rolled parchment, tied with a thick leather thong. "Elara, Omega of the Greenbrier Pack," his voice boomed, deep as a rumbling earth. "Alpha Thorne of Northmount sends his summons. The bond has been confirmed." Her breath hitched. A hushed silence fell over the bustling market square outside, every eye now fixed on her. The news spread like wildfire, a wave of awe and pity washing over her own pack members who had gathered. Some looked at her with reverence, others with a mournful understanding. Deep down, she knew the truth. Her life, as she knew it, was over. "Summons?" Elara's voice was thin, a fragile shield against the inevitable. I refuse." Her stomach churned. She was Elara, the weaver, the independent spirit, not some pawn in a fated game. The messenger's expression didn't waver. "Refusal is unwise. The bond demands its due, Omega, for both parties." His gaze flickered to her wrist, a silent warning. Not only that, he spoke of ancient laws, of consequences that could shatter packs and condemn souls. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure the whole pack could hear it. She felt like a trapped bird, beating its wings against invisible bars. Because of that, a raw, defiant fire ignited in her eyes. She wouldn't go. She couldn't. Not if it meant becoming merely someone's property. Later that night, the soft glow of her mother's lantern barely pierced the gloom of Elara's workshop. The air hung heavy with unspoken fears. Her defiance had sent ripples through the pack, and now, the full weight of their anxieties pressed down on her. "Elara, please." Her mother's voice was a soft plea, a sound Elara rarely heard. "You don't understand the price of refusal. My grandmother, she knew a young Omega marked just like you. She tried to fight it. Her mate, he wasted away, a shadow of himself. And she slowly withered too. It was agonizing, for both." Her mother's eyes, usually so calm, were wide with remembered terror, a story etched in her soul. Not only that, the pack elders arrived, their faces grim, their voices low and urgent. Elder Lyra, her white hair braided with sacred beads, placed a trembling hand on Elara's shoulder. "The bond, child, is life itself. To reject it is to invite death. Not just for you and Alpha Thorne, but a slow, agonizing decay of the pack's spirit. The balance, it would shatter." Her words painted a chilling picture of collective suffering. Elara listened, her spirit buckling under the weight of their pleas. She felt trapped, truly trapped. Her vision of freedom, of carving her own path, felt naive, selfish even. The choice wasn't just hers. It involved Thorne, a stranger, and her entire pack. What's worse, the alternative wasn't freedom. It was slow, mutual destruction. Could she truly condemn him and herself to such a fate? Her initial goal of avoiding the bond now felt impossible, replaced by a desperate search for any loophole, any way to preserve her soul if her body was destined for this. The thought of becoming a loveless bond, a mere vessel, sent shivers down her spine, a horrifying echo of the very thing she feared most. The chill of dawn clung to the forest, wrapping around Elara as she stood at the edge of her home territory. Her small travel satchel, packed with only the barest essentials, a change of clothes, a few herbs, and a small unfinished weaving, felt impossibly heavy in her hand. Her loom, silent and abandoned in her workshop, seemed to watch her with sorrowful eyes. She cast a longing glance back at her quiet home, at the familiar trees that had witnessed her independent spirit bloom. Her initial defiance had crumbled under the stark reality of the consequences. There was no escape. She was going to Northmount. Because of that, a profound sense of resignation settled over her, chilling her more than the morning air. Her breath plumed in the cold, misty air. "We should go, Omega," the Alpha messenger said, his voice softer now, almost empathetic. He mounted his large, dark horse, its breath steaming in the cool air. Elara nodded, her throat tight. She climbed onto the second horse, a sturdy, unfamiliar creature. The scent of pine and mountain clung to the messenger's cloak, a preview of the harsh, new reality awaiting her. She gripped the reins, her knuckles white. Her immediate goal had shifted, a stark pivot from outright refusal to simply surviving this forced journey. She would go, yes, but she would observe. She would learn. She would find a way to exist within this fated prison without losing herself entirely. As the path to Thorne's territory twisted away, leading them deeper into unfamiliar, rugged terrain, Elara felt the vastness of the unknown ahead. Her heart ached with a silence that roared louder than any protest. This wasn't just a journey, it was an irreversible step into a life she hadn't chosen, a life that promised to strip her of everything she held dear. The air grew thinner with every upward climb, biting at Elara's cheeks. Gone were the familiar scents of damp earth and verdant moss from her home. Instead, the sharp, metallic tang of rock and the faint, ever-present scent of pine needles dominated Thorne's territory. It wasn't just higher, it was starker, a land carved by harsh winds and ancient stone. Massive, jagged peaks clawed at the sky, casting long, intimidating shadows over the fortified settlement. Just like that, the Greenbrier Pack's gentle, forest-edged village seemed a distant, naive memory. They arrived at the stronghold, a formidable collection of stone and timber buildings nestled into a natural defensive alcove. No welcoming committee, no warm smiles. Instead, a stoic warrior, face etched with grim lines, met them. His eyes, devoid of warmth, swept over Elara, assessing. He smelled of sweat and vigilance. Without another word, he gestured for her to follow, leading her through narrow, winding paths between sturdy longhouses. The pack members they passed were reserved, their gazes watchful, almost wary. They moved with a quiet efficiency, their expressions somber. This wasn't a place of joyful gatherings. It was a fortress, a constant vigil. In the quiet that followed, Elara caught a fleeting glimpse of Thorne. He stood on a raised platform, overlooking the training grounds, his back ramrod straight. He was a dark, imposing silhouette against the pale sky, his form radiating an undeniable, raw power. Yet, his shoulders seemed to carry an invisible weight, a burden that even from this distance felt palpable. As if pulled by a string, her gaze lingered, but he never turned, never acknowledged her arrival. He was the reclusive Alpha, just as the whispers had claimed. Elara's stomach twisted. This place, this man, felt like a cage fashioned from granite and sorrow. Her goal was simply to understand this desolate, watchful world and find her footing without stumbling. She didn't know what scared her more, the palpable tension in the air, or the undeniable, distant pull of the man who refused to even look at her. Days bled into a tense, unspoken rhythm. Elara sought solace in her old habits, finding a secluded spot near a trickling mountain spring, attempting to sketch the alien flora, her fingers itching for her loom. But she was never truly alone. A subtle presence, A shifting shadow at the periphery of her vision was always there, a silent guardian. Because of that, her initial attempts at solitary exploration were met with polite but firm redirection. She understood. She was a marked omega, a perceived vulnerability, and perhaps a curiosity. Her interactions with Thorne were fleeting, charged with an electric tension that hummed beneath the surface. At communal meals, she'd feel his gaze, a heavy weight that prickled her skin, only for her to look up and find his eyes already averted, fixed on some distant point. Instead, sometimes their hands would brush as they reached for a shared serving platter, or their shoulders would accidentally collide in a narrow doorway. With every heartbeat, a jolt, sharp and undeniable, would pass between them, a silent fire igniting only to be quickly extinguished by Thorne's immediate withdrawal. He moved as if constantly bracing for an impact, his jaw often clenched, his handsome features shadowed by a deep, weary sadness. Truth be told, Elara hated the unwanted attraction that surged through her veins with each accidental touch. It contradicted everything she believed about her freedom, about him. He was a closed book, a fortress of sorrow. Yet, his reclusive nature, once perceived as arrogance, now seemed tinged with profound, hidden pain. She saw the strain in his eyes, the way his pack looked to him with a mix of awe and worry. What's worse, she found herself wanting to unravel his mystery, a dangerous curiosity pulling her closer to the very bond she resented. This dance of avoidance and undeniable attraction, this push and pull became their language. The mountain air, usually crisp, felt heavy with an unnatural stillness. Elara had ventured just beyond the main fortifications, captivated by a peculiar crimson-leafed plant she'd never seen. As if the forest watched, the silence stretched, unnerving. Without warning, a rustle in the dense undergrowth froze her. Not an animal. Too deliberate. Her instincts surged, a primal alarm screaming in her ears. Before she could move, 3 figures burst from the trees. Not Thorne's warriors, but strangers, their faces contorted with malice, their scent harsh and predatory. The marked one hissed, his eyes glinting with a chilling triumph. They knew about her. They were here for her. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Elara. This wasn't a random encounter. This was a hunt. But then, a blur of dark fur, a guttural growl that shook the earth, erupted from the tree line. Thorne. He was a whirlwind of raw power, moving with a speed that defied his human form, a protective fury blazing in his golden eyes. He lunged, a snarling beast, his movements precise and deadly. As if summoned, his warriors followed, fighting with a synchronized ferocity. The clash of bodies, the snarls and grunts filled the clearing. Elara watched, transfixed, as Thorne moved, a force of nature. He was fighting for her. A rogue, quicker than the others, broke past Thorne's defense, knife glinting. Elara felt a searing pain as the blade sliced her arm, a shallow but deliberate cut, a malicious warning. A beat later, the rogue was slammed against a tree by Thorne, who seemed to materialize out of thin air, his own hand bleeding from a defensive blow. The rogue, spitting curses, scrambled away, melting back into the shadows. In that moment, as Thorne turned, his gaze locking onto her bleeding arm, his face a mask of primal protectiveness, Elara felt a confusing warmth spread through her chest. She had never known she needed protection, never realized how fiercely it could be given. This was more than just a fated bond. It was a connection forged in the heat of battle, a silent promise of defense. The faint sting of the cut on Elara's arm was a constant reminder of the attack, and of Thorne's ferocious, unexpected protection. He'd ordered her movements even more restricted after that, a smothering blanket of concern that chafed at her independent spirit. Despite that, she found herself watching him more closely. He was a puzzle, a fortress of solitude. One evening, after a tense discussion about reinforcing the pack's outer defenses, Elara approached him. The scent of rain on dry stone clung to his cloak, just like the guardedness clung to his every move. "You push me away," she stated, her voice quiet but firm, refusing to be intimidated by his distant demeanor. But you fight like a demon to protect me." She gestured to her healing arm. "Why? What are you so afraid of?" He flinched, a subtle tightening around his eyes that she almost missed. "Some things are best left buried, Omega." His voice was a low growl, strained. "My family. A tragedy. It shattered us." His hand instinctively went to a faint scar near his temple, a gesture of deep, ingrained pain. Not only that, his usual stoicism cracked, revealing a raw, profound sorrow that made her stomach clench. He spoke of loss, of responsibility, of things he couldn't control. He spoke of a betrayal, though he didn't name the perpetrator, a whisper of a wound that never truly healed. As the silence stretched, she felt the immense weight of his unspoken burden, a suffocating shroud that he carried constantly. He had loved, and he had lost. His reluctance wasn't arrogance, it was fear, born from a past she couldn't yet fathom. The cold fear of repeating that loss, that trauma, was etched deep within his very bones. It wasn't an accident, was it? She found herself asking, a realization dawning on her. He froze, his gaze locking onto hers, wide with a flicker of terror quickly masked. He turned abruptly, walking away, leaving her with the heavy silence and the unsettling truth that lingered in the air. The man was drowning in sorrow, and the more she learned, the more she felt pulled into his depths. The aftermath of the scout's confession plunged Thorne into a deep, silent despair, consumed by the magnitude of the betrayal. He retreated into the darkest corners of his study, emerging only for essential duties, a shadow of his already reclusive self. Meanwhile, Elara, now fiercely driven by the rogue's taunts, pored over ancient pack scrolls and fragmented texts with the pack's oldest lore-keeper, Elder Bryn, a wizened Omega with eyes that held centuries of knowledge. "The mark is a conduit," Elara whispered, tracing a faded illustration of an Omega's glowing wrist, echoing the scout's words. "A protective magic? Healing shattered pack bonds?" Bryn nodded slowly, her fingers sifting through brittle pages. "Rare, almost forgotten. In times of gravest imbalance, an Omega's bond magic can mend more than just two souls. It can knit the very spirit of a pack broken by betrayal, by discord." She spoke of legends, of Omegas whose love and dedication transformed into tangible, healing energy. Because of that, a new goal solidified within Elara. She had to learn to harness this power, not for herself, but for Thorne, for his shattered pack. At the same time, the rogue pack, enraged by the captured scout's confession and now fully aware of Elara's unique mark, intensified their attacks. They stopped skirmishing and started raiding, bolder, more frequent assaults on the outer defenses, specifically targeting the sections closest to Elara's living quarters. The sound of clashing steel and distant snarls became a constant, terrifying backdrop to her studies. As the wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of invading wolves, Elara felt the mark on her wrist pulse with a new, insistent warmth, almost as if it was urging her forward, eager to awaken. Her fight for personal freedom had evolved. Now it was a fight for collective survival, for the healing of a broken spirit and the protection of the one man she was fated to, whether she wanted it or not. Thorne was a ghost in his own skin, his eyes hollowed by the scout's confession. The raw agony of betrayal clung to him like a shroud. He retreated further, burying himself in strategizing with his captains, but his usual decisive aura was clouded by a profound, shaking grief. Meanwhile, Elara, fueled by the revelation of her mark's true purpose, sought him out in the dimly lit war room. The air was thick with the scent of old parchment and Thorne's quiet despair. "This isn't your fault," Elara stated, her voice cutting through the oppressive silence, her tone surprisingly firm. She watched him, seeing not just the formidable Alpha, but the tormented man beneath. Because of that, she felt an unexpected pang of compassion, a desire to ease his crushing burden. She stepped closer, her hand instinctively reaching out, her fingers brushing his. As the bond pulsed, a faint, warm light bloomed from her mark, mirroring the one on his wrist. It wasn't just a glow. It was a gentle current, a surge of pure, restorative energy flowing from her to him. Thorne flinched, his head snapping up, his golden eyes locking onto hers, wide with surprise. What was that?" he murmured, his voice rough. "My mark," she explained, a quiet confidence blooming in her chest. "It's not just a bond, Thorne. It's a conduit for healing, for us. Your tragedy wasn't an accident. It was a wound, inflicted to weaken you. But this bond, our bond, it can heal shattered pack bonds. Not just ours, but the pack's spirit." She saw the flicker of hope, hesitant but undeniable, in his eyes. Truth be told, she was offering more than comfort. She was offering a path forward, a reason to fight back, not just with steel, but with something far deeper. His hand, which had been tense, slowly relaxed beneath hers, a silent, powerful acknowledgement of her words, a nascent seed of trust taking root. He watched her, a profound realization dawning in his eyes as if seeing her for the very first time. The rogue pack's desperation grew, their attacks more cunning. They laid a trap, a diversionary skirmish designed to pull Thorne's warriors away, exposing a vulnerable flank where Elara was known to assist the healers. Just like that, the forest erupted. A sudden, piercing howl, too close, tore through the air, followed by the terrifying thud of charging bodies. Elara had been gathering herbs with a small escort when the ambush struck. The scent of ozone and primal fear filled her nostrils. Rogue wolves, their eyes gleaming with malicious intent, burst from the undergrowth, their focus unwavering on Elara. "The mark," one snarled, lunging for her. Without thinking, her body moved on instinct. A raw, ancient power surged through her veins, warm and bright, originating from the mark on her wrist. Her hands shot forward, and a shimmering, almost visible shield of light erupted from her, pushing back the attacking wolves with incredible force. It hummed with protective energy, vibrant and alive. What followed was a desperate, swirling brawl. Thorne, responding to the urgency in her magic, appeared through the chaos, a blur of dark fur and furious growls. He tore into the rogues, a true alpha in his element, but her shield was vital, protecting injured warriors and holding the line. More importantly, she didn't just block. She felt the cracks in their opponent's own fractured ranks, sensing the very shattered bonds the lorekeeper had spoken of. The rogue leader, seeing his plan thwarted by Elara's impossible defense, let out a frustrated bellow. "Fall back! The Omega's power! It's real! We need a new strategy!" he roared, his voice laced with venom. He cast one last furious glance at Elara, his eyes promising a brutal return. The rogues retreated, melting back into the shadows, leaving behind injured warriors and a stunned silence. Elara stood, trembling, the shield fading, leaving her momentarily drained but exhilarated. As her wolf stirred, a deep satisfaction resonated within her. She had not only protected, but had actively wielded the power of her mark. Thorne rushed to her side, his hand gently touching her arm, his golden eyes filled with a mixture of awe and profound, dawning understanding. He no longer looked at her with pity or reluctance, but with a silent reverence. The rogue leader's retreat was short-lived, replaced by a relentless, suffocating siege. They no longer sought a quick ambush. They wanted to break Thorne's pack, starve them, and then take Elara. By the time the third day of continuous assault dawned, Thorne's formidable stronghold was showing signs of strain. Food supplies dwindled. Warriors were exhausted, their faces grim, their spirit wavering. Thorne, despite Elara's presence, still fought a silent battle within himself. His eyes would occasionally drift to the scar on his temple, a momentary flicker of his old, paralyzing fear of loss. She felt it, clear as day, the tremor of his reluctance, even as he commanded with a weary strength. Elara found him alone on the ramparts, staring out at the enemy campfires, his shoulders hunched. The air thickened with unspoken despair. "You can't do this alone, Thorne," she urged, her voice trembling slightly. "Your reluctance, It's a wound they are still exploiting. They know your fear of losing those you protect. Her heart ached for him, but she knew the brutal truth. They wouldn't survive unless he fully embraced their bond, unless he shed his self-imposed isolation. He turned, his golden eyes shadowed. "I won't lose anyone else," he rasped, the words a raw confession. "Not again, especially not you." "Then don't." Elara stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "We do this together. This isn't just my mark, Thorne. It's our bond. It's meant to heal, to strengthen. You said I was a flame in the darkness. Well, let's burn together." She took his hand, her mark glowing fiercely, channeling her resolve, her burgeoning power, and her undeniable love directly into him. The touch ignited a reciprocal energy, a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through their joined hands. As the bond pulsed, his own mark flared in response. Her wolf pressed forward, recognizing the need for unity. Thorne's expression shifted, his fear slowly replaced by a fierce, determined light. He looked at her, truly seeing her, seeing the power she offered, the partnership she craved. And just like that, everything changed. The space between them burned, not with tension, but with a shared, potent resolve. Their separate battles had converged into a singular, undeniable force. Now, there was no turning back. The air crackled with a malevolent energy, thick with the acrid scent of burning timber and fear. For days, the rogue pack had battered Thorne's defenses, their howls a relentless, terrifying chorus. Elara, her own magic a constant, shimmering shield, fought alongside the weary warriors, desperately deflecting attacks. But then, a chilling, triumphant roar split the dawn. Without warning, the outer wall, weakened by days of relentless assault, splintered inward with a deafening crack, collapsing into a cloud of dust and debris. Just like that, the rogue pack swarmed, a tide of snarling bodies, their eyes gleaming with cold, calculated victory. They were a torrent, unstoppable. What followed was a nightmare. They didn't scatter. They moved with brutal precision, targeting key defensive positions, overwhelming Thorne's tired forces. Elara pushed her magic, pouring every ounce of her will into the protective light, shielding groups of vulnerable pack members trying to stem the tide. But there were too many. As if the world narrowed, she saw Thorne's most loyal beta, Rian, fall, clutching a grievous wound, his guttural cry echoing her own despair. Her strength wavered. The constant drain on her magic was immense, like trying to hold back an ocean with her bare hands. She felt the searing burn in her veins, the exhaustion pulling at her very bones. What's worse, the rogue wolves seemed to mock her efforts, their snarls growing louder, closer. They were a living, breathing force of chaos, their hunger for dominance palpable. How could she possibly protect everyone when the very ground beneath them was crumbling? Her vision blurred at the edges. She watched in horror as more of Thorne's warriors went down, their cries of pain piercing her heart. Her valiant efforts, moments ago so powerful, now felt tragically insufficient. The stronghold had become a bloody, desperate tableau. Smoke stung Elara's eyes, and the metallic tang of fresh blood filled her mouth. She pushed through the chaos, her magic flickering, searching for Thorne. Then, she saw him. He stood in the main courtyard, a lone figure of defiance against the rogue leader, a hulking brute with eyes of glacial ice and a cruel sneer. The air between them crackled with an unspoken history, thick with the weight of betrayal. "Still clinging to a broken past, Thorne?" the rogue leader sneered, his voice dripping with venom, twisting a knife already plunged deep. "You let Camilla die. Your weakness killed her, not the mountain. And now this Omega. She'll be another sacrifice to your pathetic failure," Thorne roared, a sound of pure agony and rage. But the words, meant to shatter him, did. He faltered, a ghost of a memory flashing in his eyes, his movements losing their razor edge. In the span of a breath, the rogue leader lunged, a lightning-fast strike. Thorne tried to block, but his guard was down, shattered by the psychological assault. The blow landed with a sickening thud, sending Thorne sprawling, a dark stain blossoming on his side. He landed heavily, his breath rasping, his golden eyes clouding with pain and a terrible, familiar defeat. Without thinking, Elara screamed his name, a raw sound ripped from her soul. She threw herself forward, her last reserves of magic flaring into a desperate, shimmering shield around him. But her power was weak, strained, and the shield pulsed erratically, a fragile, trembling barrier. She saw the rogue leader's triumphant smirk, his eyes fixed on her. "Just as I thought," he chuckled. "The Marked One's power drains when her alpha falls. You'll be ours." His words were a physical blow. The pack, witnessing Thorne's fall, seemed to lose all hope. Their roars of defiance dwindled to whimpers, their fighting spirit evaporating like mist. Elara knelt over Thorne, her hands pressed to his bleeding wound, feeling his life force drain, and with it, her own hope, her own strength. The cacophony of battle had died down, replaced by the chilling sounds of the rogue pack's triumphant howls and their raucous celebration echoing through the beleaguered stronghold. Elara huddled in a makeshift infirmary, the smell of blood and despair heavy in the air. Thorne lay pale and still on a pallet, his breath shallow, his body broken. She cradled his head, her fingers tracing the faint scar on his temple, the one the rogue leader had so cruelly reminded him of. Her own mark felt cold, inert, a dead weight on her wrist. In the stillness that followed, she stared at the pulsing mark, then at Thorne's still face. Was this it? Was this the ultimate price of their fated bond? Her deepest fear, the one that had haunted her since the mark first appeared, now clawed at her. That accepting this bond meant losing herself, becoming merely a tragic extension of another's pain, another's property, forever tied to his suffering. Her independent spirit, once a blazing fire, now felt like a dying ember. The core emotional question reverberated in the desolate silence. Can true freedom be found within a fated bond? Or will it inevitably lead to the loss of self? Right now, the answer felt like a resounding, crushing no. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't conjure a spark of her unique healing magic, couldn't feel the restorative hum that had flowed from her before. It was gone. Or perhaps it was simply overwhelmed by the sheer, unadulterated despair that gripped her. The task of healing Thorne, of rallying a shattered pack, of fighting an enemy that knew their alpha's deepest wounds, it all seemed utterly, tragically impossible. The celebrating rogues' voices were a mournful dirge, a chilling soundtrack to her lowest point. Her world was bleak, devoid of light. The silence in the infirmary was broken only by Thorne's shallow, ragged breaths. Elara, hunched over him, felt the chilling weight of her despair, her magic utterly dormant. Yet, as her hand, still bearing the cold, inert mark, instinctively brushed against his own mark, the one throbbing faintly on his wrist, a jolt, faint but unmistakable, shot through her. It wasn't just her magic. It was his essence, a surge of fragmented memories and raw emotions from before his tragedy, before the bitterness and the blame. She saw glimpses, a fierce, honorable leader, a playful smile, a deep love for his pack, a quiet strength untainted by sorrow. It was the true Thorne, buried beneath years of pain. And just like that, everything changed. A faint, collective hum resonated through the air, not just from Thorne, but from the very stones of the wounded stronghold. It was the faint, desperate whisper of shattered pack bonds, the same essence Elder Bryn had spoken of. As her wolf stirred, Elara understood. Her freedom wasn't lost in the bond, but found through it, by choosing to heal, to fight, to become the nexus of their fragmented strength. The mark wasn't a prison. It was a conduit, waiting for her to wield it with purpose. She no longer had to escape the bond. She had to embrace it, fully and fiercely. She felt it, clear as day, her purpose, reborn from the ashes of despair. Because of that, a surge of pure, defiant hope ignited within her, rekindling the flame that had almost died. She wasn't just fated to Thorne, she was fated to save them all. Her perspective shifted, transforming her fear into an unwavering resolve. She looked at Thorne, not as a symbol of her lost freedom, but as a partner, a key to their collective survival. The long night of the soul had passed, replaced by the steely light of a new dawn. Elara rose, her movements stiff but resolute. The mark on her wrist once again pulsed with a warm, steady glow, a beacon in the dim infirmary. She found the few remaining able-bodied pack members, their faces gaunt with exhaustion, their spirits crushed. In the quiet that followed, she spoke, her voice clear and strong despite her lingering fatigue. "We are not broken. Not yet." She told them of Thorne's true past, of the rogue leader's calculated lies, and of the unique healing power dormant within her mark. A power to mend not just wounds, but the very fabric of their pack. "The Alpha is gravely wounded," she admitted, her gaze sweeping over their skeptical faces. "But his spirit and yours can be mended. My bond, it allows me to touch the essence of our pack's unity. We can fight back, not just with claws and teeth, but with a united spirit." Her words were a balm, a spark in their weary eyes. She worked with the grim-faced elders, their wisdom now merging with her newfound determination. Together, they formulated a daring counterattack, a desperate gamble based on precision and surprise, aimed at the rogue leader himself. Even so, Thorne stirred on the pallet, his eyes fluttering open. He looked at Elara, a silent question in their depths. She met his gaze, and with a small, determined nod, conveyed her plan. He responded with a flicker of his own mark, a faint acknowledgement, a silent trust that spoke volumes. He was weak, but his alpha instincts, though dimmed, were awakening. He managed a raspy whisper, providing fragmented but crucial tactical advice, his spirit beginning to reassert itself. With every heartbeat, Elara felt their bond strengthen, not just a romantic pull, but a profound, strategic partnership. She was no longer just his fated mate. She was a co-leader, ready to fight for their future. Beneath the moonlight, Elara led the small, revitalized force through the treacherous mountain passes. The crisp night air filled her lungs, bracing her. She moved with a newfound purpose, her senses heightened. She channeled her unique healing magic, not into grand shields, but into subtle currents of energy that flowed through her pack members, mending frayed nerves, bolstering weary muscles, subtly knitting the emotional fractures caused by the siege. She saw the renewed determination in their eyes, their grim resolve mirroring her own. Thorne, though still pale and leaning heavily on one of his warriors, walked beside her, no longer reluctant. His hand occasionally brushed hers, a silent testament to their unbreakable connection. He wasn't just a leader, he was her anchor, their bond a shimmering thread weaving through the night. As if fate demanded it, their synchronized steps carried them towards the rogue pack's temporary encampment, a sprawling, chaotic mess of crude shelters and roaring fires. The scent of unwashed wolves and the triumphant, drunken howls of their enemies drifted on the wind. The tension mounted with every stealthy step. As the sky darkened, concealing their movements, Elara felt the surge of anticipation, a primal thrill mixing with her resolve. This wasn't just a battle for territory. It was a battle for their very souls, for the right to choose their own destiny, for the healing of a betrayal that had haunted Thorne for years. She looked at Thorne, his eyes now blazing with a quiet fire, reflecting her own unwavering resolve. Their love, forged in fire and shared vulnerability, was now their greatest weapon, ready to unleash itself upon the unsuspecting enemy. The rogue leader, a hulking shadow, lunged for Thorne, his snarl a promise of death. As the air thickened with the raw scent of fear and rage, Elara moved. She didn't think. She simply acted. The mark on her wrist blazed, not with a faint glow, but with a blinding, pulsating light that pulsed with every beat of her heart. And she let it happen. "You can't break what's already whole!" she screamed, her voice ripping through the chaos, empowered by the surge of her unique magic. Her hands flew out, not just shielding Thorne, but sending a wave of shimmering turquoise energy directly at the rogue leader. It wasn't a destructive force. It was something far more insidious, far more profound. It slammed into him, a shockwave designed to unmake. He reeled back, clutching his head, his eyes widening in confusion. The energy didn't just push. It reached into the depths of his twisted pack, into the very shattered bonds of his followers, amplifying their inherent discord, their resentments, turning them against each other. What followed was pandemonium. The rogue leader's eyes, wide with horror, darted to his own wolves, now snarling, fighting among themselves, confused by the sudden surge of internal conflict. His grip on them, once absolute, crumbled. Thorne, witnessing Elara's power, no longer hesitated. The last vestiges of his self-blame, his crippling reluctance, burned away in the furnace of his love for her, his fierce resolve to protect. As his wolf stirred, he let out a guttural roar, a true alpha's battle cry, raw and untamed. He moved, a blur of golden eyes and dark fur, not just fighting, but leading, rallying his own exhausted warriors with a primal force. Together, they became unstoppable. Thorne tore through the rogue's inner circle, a whirlwind of claws and teeth, while Elara, her magic a steady, brilliant beacon, continued to sow confusion among their ranks, her healing energy a weapon of unity against discord. The rogue leader, isolated and betrayed by his own, turned one last, desperate lunge at Elara. But then, Thorne was there, a solid wall of fury, intercepting the blow. He ended it swiftly, decisively, his growl echoing through the now silencing battlefield. Just like that, the fight was over. The central conflict resolved, not just by force, but by the power of a bond that transcended mere physical strength. Elara stood beside Thorne, panting, exhilarated, her mark radiating warmth. The battle's raw aftermath settled, leaving a stunned silence broken only by the whimpers of the wounded and the soft cries of relief. The scent of blood slowly dissipated, replaced by the earthy smell of fresh rain, washing away the night's horrors. As the echo faded, Elara, though exhausted, immediately turned her attention to her pack. Her magic, vibrant and alive, pulsed with a renewed strength. She moved through the injured, kneeling beside them, her hands glowing as she laid them on wounds. Her soul answered the collective sorrow flowing into each warrior. "Hold on," she murmured, her voice soft, infused with her magic. She didn't just heal their flesh. She mended the subtle fractures in their spirits, calming their fear, reassuring their minds, knitting the frayed threads of their unity. She felt the subtle shift in them, the easing of tension, the quiet acceptance of her touch. Meanwhile, Thorne, battered but resolute, moved among his pack, his voice a steady rumble of command and comfort. He directed his remaining warriors to secure the territory, to tend to the fallen. More importantly, the captured rogue leader, now stripped of his power and influence, finally confessed. His motivations were laid bare: profound jealousy of Thorne's family legacy, a festering resentment from a past dispute, and a twisted belief that by shattering powerful bonds, he could steal their essence. His own pack, once loyal through fear, now openly reviled him. Elara listened, a quiet sorrow in her heart. She understood the depth of the rot, the extent of the shattered bonds within his pack. Her magic, though she didn't use it on him, pulsed with the knowledge that true healing went beyond physical wounds. It touched the very core of what it meant to belong. Weeks unfolded, each one a testament to the resilience of Thorne's pack. The stronghold, once a symbol of his solitary burden, transformed into a vibrant hub of activity. Buildings were rebuilt, defenses strengthened, and the laughter of children, long absent, began to echo through the courtyards. Come morning, the pack moved with a newfound cohesion, their spirits high, their bonds visibly stronger. It was a thriving, unified community, reborn from the ashes of conflict. Elara, no longer fearing the mark, now wore it openly, proudly. It was a part of her, a symbol of their unbreakable love and her own powerful, unique strength. She returned to her loom, but her tapestries now told different stories. not of quiet solitude, but of unity, of resilience, of the vibrant interweaving of diverse souls. Her work, once a private rebellion, became a public celebration of their new path. And just like that, her deepest fear, losing her independence, had been irrevocably transformed into a profound freedom found within connection, not apart from it. Thorne, his past wounds healed, stood tall, no longer reclusive. His previous reluctance had completely dissipated, replaced by a quiet confidence that settled deep in his golden eyes. He led with strength and compassion, his decisions guided by both his alpha instincts and Elara's insight. They moved as one, a seamless partnership, their hands often clasped, a silent testament to the love forged in fire and vulnerability. As if the forest watched, their story, the Omega who found her power in a fated bond, and the Alpha who shed his fear through love, began to spread far beyond Northmount. It became a beacon of hope for other packs, a living legend that reluctance could indeed lead to the most profound, all-consuming love, proving that destiny was not a cage, but a canvas. Their love story, a symphony of resilience and devotion, echoed through the mountains, a promise of eternal spring after the longest winter. Thank you so much for watching this video. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. If you enjoyed what you saw, we've got a whole library of other videos packed with more great content just like this waiting for you on our channel. So, why not dive into another one right now? And hey, if you want to make sure you don't miss out on our next upload, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. We'd love to have you join our community and see you in the next video. Thanks again.